All right, up next we have Derek. Derek wrote in and said, I think Donald Trump would be a better president, but suggests we should vote for Hillary Rodham Clinton on economic grounds. The elite, central banks, socialist, and regulating interventionist busybodies have pushed the global fiat financial system to a point beyond repair. There is little that Donald Trump or anyone else can do at this point to unwind the mess. The president doesn't have the power to make needed effective change, nor would the vested interests allow it if he did. Additionally, Hillary's policies will accelerate the collapse, so maybe we can get through it faster. Shouldn't we let history record the failure under Hillary instead of during the term of a quote-unquote businessman? If not, it will be seen as a failure of capitalism, even though its cause is absence of the free market. That's from Derek.
Hello, Derek. How you doing?
Hi, Stefan. Great.
Yeah, I mean, I understand this, and I'm sure Mike will have something to add as well. But I've made this case in the past. I remember way back in the day, this sort of the worse is better kind of thing, like give the government the money so they can run up more debt, so they can go bankrupt more quickly, so we get on to the next thing. That was sort of an early article that I put out, freedomain.blogspot.com. And I also made the case, I think it was in 2008, that if Ron Paul got into power and tried to implement his goals, then public sector unions would revolt, there'd be blood in the streets, and everyone would say, this is what happens when you get a libertarian president, and all this kind of stuff, and nobody would really understand the causes. And so, I mean, I want to sort of acknowledge and let everyone remember that I'm perfectly aware of arguments that I've made in the past, and I'm not pretending that I didn't, so people can go, but you said. I fully understand all of that. But I don't think it is the case with Trump for sort of two fundamental reasons. No one's going to get real upset if taxes get simplified, regulations get cut, and so on. What Ron Paul wanted to do was much more radical than what Trump wants to do. And the idea of controlling immigration, of diminishing immigration to America, America has taken in a ridiculous number of immigrants, and immigrants from cultures that have never really tried to live together before, right? This is important. You take 100,000 Somalis and you airlift them to Minnesota. Well, you're really trying something new. And just over the last couple of decades, over 42 million immigrants into America, the majority of which is like a significant majority of which are coming from really, really, really different cultures and really different religions and really different backgrounds and methods of social organization, and no real history in the Western traditions. So that is a massive experiment, which has never, to my knowledge, right? It's never been tried, certainly not to this degree. It's never been tried in the history of humanity to try and jam this many cultures and ethnicities and races and religions and into sort of one place and have them all kind of jammed together through the welfare state and this, that, and the other. I mean, it is a huge amount of risk that is being taken on. Of course, there are a lot of people who say, well, it's going to work out really, really well. Really well. And there are other people who say it's going to work out really, really badly. Like Civil War badly. Because the other thing, too, is the cultures who came to America before, like 19th century, they came without a welfare state, without Medicare, without Medicaid, without pensions, without, you could go on and on the list of things, right? So they came because they wanted to roll up their sleeves and work hard in a free market that could accommodate them. And even then, a third of the people from Europe who came over to America went back home, didn't like it, didn't work out for them, right? And that's a lot more compatibility than a lot of these other ethnicities and cultures that are coming to America and who are disproportionately using the welfare state, which means that they're not exactly there for the economic opportunities or the freedoms or whatever, right? I mean, maybe they are, and then they just get sucked under into the welfare state quagmire, who knows, right? But there is this massive experiment that is going on. And where this experiment has been tried in the past with even more compatible cultures, I'm thinking of Northern and Southern Ireland. You can think of Yugoslavia. You can think of the Balkans. You can think of a wide variety of places. You can think of various tribes trying to get along together in Africa, generally the same races. I mean, in the Protestants, the Catholics, oh yeah, Irish and British to a large degree, but, still white, still Christian, right? Right, and they blowing each other up. And, as I said before in the show, as a kid, there was watch out for all of these grocery bags or unattended backpacks and bus stops that blow your head right off, kid. So we don't have any magic sauce that has disparate tribes magically get along well together. And whatever integration means, I mean, nobody even can really describe what does integration mean. What does it mean to integrate? Does that mean that the people from the Middle East who go to France become just like French people? What does that mean? No, nobody even knows. I don't even know what the hell people mean when they say integrate, other than it's a magic word which means there won't be fighting in the streets, right? I mean, how is this going to work? Nobody knows. Nobody knows. It's a massive experiment. Of course, if you're going to try this kind of experiment, you try small doses first, right? Right? You try little doses. You'd say, okay, well, for a couple of generations in, we'll take, 50,000 people. And, we'll see how it works out after, maybe 90 years. How's it working out with the Amish? Have they integrated? Right? Not really. There's still places in Pennsylvania where they still speak German. How are the French integrating into Canada? Well, no, they're still speaking French, right? What does it mean? Nobody knows. Nobody knows. And so there's this big, giant, massive experiment that's going on in the West, which in most other situations and circumstances has resulted in staggering disaster. And people just want to keep hitting the gas on it. I mean, people on the left, right? They just want to import people who are going to vote for them. It's got nothing to do with multiculturalism. It's they want all the cultures that vote Democrat to come into America, right? And for Trump to say, "Whoa, Nelly," I may be paraphrasing a little here, but to say, why don't we do what America did about 100 years ago, like in the 1920s, and just put a massive pause on immigration for, half a century. I don't know if he's talking about half a century, but that's what happened. Basically, from early mid-1920s until the mid-1960s, immigration really, really slowed to a trickle in America. And it was, in many ways, some of the most prosperous times in America, obviously outside of the Dust Bowl and the Great Depression and so on. But if you look at standard of living 1925 to 1965, it was a massive, massive increase, even with the Depression and the Dust Bowl and the war, Second World War and all of that. It was still amazing, and particularly for blacks, right? Huge increases in income, entrance into the professions, and stability of marriage and so on. So I don't think people really understand just what a staggeringly huge and risky experiment this is. And the people who say, oh, it's fine, all we have to do is stop white people from being racist and prejudiced and everything will be perfect. Really? Really? That must be why all the tribes in Africa get along so well. So this giant experiment needs to be evaluated. And to evaluate it, you need to – everyone says, oh, it's all going to work out well. It's like, well, why don't we slow it down for a little and find out? Because, if it doesn't work out, that's it. If it doesn't work out, that's it for Western civilization as we know it. And, call me crazy, call me patriarchal, call me lost in the past. I have quite an affinity and praise and respect, affection, devotion, and love for Western civilization. So don't mess with it. And it's not, you don't have to mess with it. It's not necessary to mess with it. Immigration is a displacement, right? Because immigrants come in, have lots of kids, take lots of welfare, which means that whites get taxed more, which means whites have fewer kids, right? It's not America plus immigration. It's America plus immigration minus Americans. And the statistics are very clear on that, and even more clear in Europe. So for Donald Trump to say, let's take a pause on immigration, or whatever he wants to do with immigration, or let's enforce existing immigration laws, that's not – saying enforce the law is not a revolutionary statement. Saying let's replace the Tsar with Lenin, okay, that's a revolutionary, literally a revolutionary statement. But saying let's enforce the existing law and there is no innate right for everyone in the world who wants to come and live in America to come and live in America. The Constitution applies to Americans, not to foreigners. And to people on American soil, but not to foreigners. So if Hillary Clinton gets in, she, of course, he's talked about, she wants open borders, basically, which is one of these weird phrases that is a complete oxymoron. If it's open, it's not a border. I mean, open borders it's a concept. It's complete. It's like square circle. It's a concept that makes absolutely no sense. A border, by definition, is where one country ends and another country begins. There's barriers to crossing. Open means, okay, no borders.
And now, Steph, let me just add in, too, because the WikiLeaks speeches dropped today, some of Hillary Clinton's speeches that she gave to Wall Street. And she talked about having a public position and a private position. And in those, it documents that she is outright for open borders. That's not even just, looking at the evidence of everything that you're saying and the positions that you're taking, I can tell that you're for open borders. She's outright
she said that. I read that
borders.
Tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah, I read that before the show, that stuff was dropping. So open borders.
Mm-hmm.
And she wants to massively increase immigration, particularly from the third world, 550% more Syrian migrants and all of this. So what was that? Jesus, Mike. Sorry, put you on the spot. You had this great picture you shared with me earlier today. The libertarian.
Oh, my favorite meme. Yeah, I have it somewhere. Let me pull it up. Okay.
Yeah, I'll filler until Mike
all
pulls
right.
that
Well,
up.
It's got a very smiling, happy guy wearing a button that says, "I didn't vote, not a statist." He's a very happy, smiling white guy with a "Don't Tread on Me" flag behind him, and there is a large swath of migrants behind him, and the caption is, "Oh, good, more people I can convince about the validity of the libertarian philosophy. Thank goodness I didn't vote for Trump."
Right. Source country IQ, as I say. You need to look this stuff up. It's very, very important and very, very real.
Well, Steph,
and I know I did the truth. I know I did the truth about voting and all of that, and the arguments there are for a high IQ society. And if a high IQ society gets replaced by a lower IQ society, again, whether it's cultural, whether it's environmental, whether it's genetic, doesn't particularly matter. Still, nobody knows how to change it. So that's a different argument. And so if Hillary gets in and she opens the borders and millions and millions more people pour in from the third world or wherever to America, what then?
Well, look, I don't agree. I don't disagree with everything you said. And actually, I almost didn't want to call in after listening to Michael's wonderful rant the other day about voting for Trump. And it actually got me to register for the first time since 1984. Although
as a Democrat, I hope.
You don't have to declare. I'm voting from overseas. You don't have to declare.
Right.
And so I agree with all of what you said. I certainly think he would do a much better job than the current path we're on. However, that said, I went up and I read Trump's economic vision, his tax plan, his speech from the Economic Club of New York. Nothing in it that he said will stop the other great war that's going on, not just the immigration war, but the fiat currency war that I see is probably at least as destructive as the immigration war. I could quote you a lot of statistics because this is what I do and study. on what's happening with the world's finances right now and the horrible shape it's in. And I just listened to your Deutsche Bank podcast also. It's actually, I think, worse than how you presented it. And so I see a collapse that is inevitable, if not imminent, although I think it's probably imminent also because signs show it's about to happen. Corporate bond defaults are already higher than they were in 2008. And a whole bunch of other stats that I'm not going to bore you with unless you want me to. And so I see, something happening that is probably bigger than the Great Depression on the horizon. And I have memories from my grandfather, who was one of the most admirable men I've ever known.
Okay, sorry. I'm sorry to interrupt you. But
Yeah.
let me just ask you this basic question because,
Sure.
of course there's going to be a big crash, right? No question. Mathematically, right? So
Yep, it's math.
there was a big crash in Germany called the Second World War,
Yep,
and they recovered
yep.
because you have a high IQ population. Tokyo was firebombed. Hiroshima and Nagasaki destroyed by nuclear weapons. In Japan, the end of the Second World War. And they survived. High IQ population. So do you want, when the crash hits in America, a high IQ population or a low IQ population?
Well, of course I
Do you
want a
want it
high
to be like Japan after the Second World War or like Iraq after the invasion?
Obvious answer to that question. I want a high IQ population. Not sure we have one as it is, but I want a high IQ population.
Well, it's higher than it would be otherwise.
Likely.
If immigration is controlled.
Well, if the economy crashes and, like you said, they self-deport themselves because there isn't money in the government to get rid of them, then won't that achieve the same thing?
Well, no, because if the economy crashes, there may be a certain amount of self-deportation, even under Hilary, of the illegal immigrants. But there are 42 million legal immigrants that have come in over the past few decades.
But Trump's not going to be...
They're not going to self-deport.
But it's not going to be any different. Trump's not going to be kicking them out either.
Okay, I get that. But he's not an open borders guy. So he's not going to be throwing the gates even wider.
No, but I'm saying if they're going to self-deport under Trump because of his policies, they will also self-deport because of the collapsed economy. Is that not true?
Are people self-deporting
Okay, but
from Venezuela?
you're missing what I'm saying. Forget about the illegal immigrants.
Okay.
If Hillary opens up more gates for legal immigration, which, as far as I understand it, she really wants to, because they're all going to vote, right? Look, if there's a self-deportation of illegal immigrants, right, and some reports have come out at the moment that one of the reasons why Obama doesn't want to enforce deportations is because they're trying to figure out ways or trying to get ways that the illegal immigrants can vote. So if there's a bunch of self-deportations from illegal immigrants, well, that's a potential, right? Then they don't have the big, we'll give you amnesty, we'll give you citizenship that they can dangle, that the Democrats can dangle in front of the illegal immigrants to get their vote. So they're going to want to import even more people who are going to vote Democrat. Right? So it's not about the illegal immigrants. It's the legal immigrants. If Donald Trump slows, or I know as some people, Ann Coulter, who was just on the show, I think has talked about a 10-year moratorium on immigration. Like, just stop. We can't take any more. The roads are too clogged. The schools are too clogged. There's too many different languages. There's too many people on welfare. There's too many people. We don't know how they're going to fit in the long run. We can't afford it. We're $20 trillion in debt, and so many of the immigrants come in cost huge amounts of money, especially if they have lots of kids. So if there's a pause or a moratorium or even a slowdown in immigration under Trump, then that's a very different scenario than the gates thrown wide under Hillary.
Okay. So let me tell you the story about my grandfather that caused me to write this. He during the Reagan election period, I was, telling him the merits of Reagan, and his view was that, he lived through the Great Depression. He sold my grandmother's wedding ring to buy toys for my dad, that kind of thing. And he would never vote for a Republican because his view was that either the Republicans were the instigators of the cause of the Depression or the Democrats were the saviors. Despite the fact, he was a working man, a machinist, a railroad engineer, an oil derrick worker. That's his viewpoint. He wasn't an intellectual that would look into the issues.
Why are we talking about your grandfather's viewpoint? Just tell me why, because I don't understand it at all.
Sure. Because when the crash comes, and I think it is a win, and Donald Trump cannot stop it because he doesn't have the power, and I'm not even sure he has the understanding of vision, but let's say he could get people around him that do. He seemed to be good at that. But the crash will come. Lots of people's lives will be destroyed.
Get it. Tell me why we're talking about your grandfather's perspective, please. We already went over this.
The legacy of the cause of this will then be those capitalists, those businessmen. Okay? And thus, for entire generations in the future, we will still be trampled with, the capitalists and the businessmen create this kind of situation, so we must turn to the other solutions, i.e. what it's been, communism.
Right, and that is exactly what a low IQ population is going to think, so we should not have a low IQ population.
But that's what we have already, so that's not going to...
Oh, so we should just give up then. So a low IQ population, when the disaster hits, is going to what? Blame Hillary? And like Donald Trump? Come on, man. The only chance we have is for a higher IQ population to understand the true causes of all of this stuff, which is why I'm out here doing the work that I do, to give better information. Is this going to reach people with an IQ of 75 or 80? No, of course not. But it's going to hit enough people out there, and there's still enough smart people out there. But if we continue to replace smart people with less smart people, well, it doesn't matter who's in power. It doesn't matter who's in power. The cry will still just be for more government, more government, more government. And the thing is, too, like your grandfather who said, well, I wouldn't vote for a Republican. Well, what the hell does Donald Trump have to do with Republicanism?
Well, he's doing that with...
I mean, the Republicans hate the guy.
It's been a hostile takeover of the party.
Yeah, what does it have to do with the Republicans? No, the Republicans hate the guy.
I said businessmen and capitalism is what it will be blamed on, not Republicans.
No. But earlier you said that your grandfather said, I won't vote for a Republican. Well, it's funny because the Republicans are all saying that Donald Trump is not a real Republican, and people are like, well, exactly. That's why we love him. Sorry, Mike, you wanted to say a thing or two?
Well, I could say quite a bit. Back to the initial point about, you don't want the libertarian in office when, the proverbial nonsense hits the fan, because then libertarianism will be skewed and blamed for it. Well, that would apply to Gary Johnson, but it doesn't apply to Donald Trump. That was an argument against smearing the brand of libertarianism, of which Donald Trump is most certainly not a libertarian. And as Steph was saying, the Republicans have spent an awful long time saying he's not a true conservative. He's not a real Republican. So, I mean, you can even say that he wouldn't even smear republicanism if things hit the fan while he was in charge.
Well, I agree. That's why I think he's going to be smearing capitalism and businessmen.
But capitalism and businessmen are always going to get smeared by the left and always going to get smeared by low IQ populations. The question is, when stuff does happen, when, the fiat currency train hits the wall, what's going to spring up out of that? If you have massive amounts of low IQ people, you're probably going to go towards more socialism. You're going to get a communist setup. That will be the direction. Yes. Venezuela just ran out of money, and it's not like free market thinking is springing up out of Venezuela. Same thing with Somalia. Every anarchist has had to hear for years, well, Somalia doesn't have a government. Do you want society to be like Somalia? Well, Somalia has an average IQ of 68. You're not going to get a free society springing up out of an IQ 68 population. Venezuela has the average IQ of 84, and that's some old information. And given that anyone in Venezuela could see the way things were going for quite a while, I imagine it was quite a bit lower when things hit the fan. So, IQ, 80 in Venezuela? Whoever stayed around? Certainly the less intelligent people stuck around, and the more intelligent people that had options got out of Dodge. So what's going to spring up out of there? You got people eating dogs on the street. Do you want people eating dogs on the streets of the United States when things hit the fan because the fiat currency situation collapses? Or would you like people that maybe have a higher average IQ that can look and say, well, all that government spending and all that, big government policies and regulation, that sure didn't work. Maybe we can go the other direction instead. You're going to get the people on the socialist side of things. You're going to get the low IQ people that want the resources that voting patterns show are going to historically vote for more government and more goodies and that type of stuff. They're always going to blame capitalism. They're always going to blame someone other than themselves. It's a complete abdication of personal responsibility. That's not going to change if Hillary Clinton is in office. If Hillary Clinton's in office, when stuff happens, these people are still going to blame the free market. It's going to be the big banks that are evil and bad, and, we need more regulation, so let's just go straight communism. Total globalist, open border society.
Okay. I agree. You've convinced
All right.
me.
Thanks very much. Appreciate it. Nobly spoken, and I appreciate the call and the conversation and the question. It is a very interesting question. Who do we want to be? And I made the case. People only remember the guy in charge of the Titanic when it goes down.
Right.
But I think it's not too late to turn it around. But I think demographics, as I've talked about incessantly for the last 2 years or more, demographics is really, really key to this. So I'm not ready to give up.
It's the only thing that matters at this point because of IQ.
Well, it's not just IQ. It's the culture as well. But I mean, it's certainly IQ is the reason I talk so much about this stuff of the IQ in particular is because nobody else, well, very few other people do.
Sure.
And it is really, really important. So thanks very much for your call. Appreciate it.
Really appreciate you bringing this up because what you say does completely apply to Gary Johnson and people thinking of voting for Gary Johnson. If you don't want libertarianism to take a giant hit when shit hits the fan, you don't want Gary Johnson in office. And, the odds of Gary Johnson getting in are practically zero. But that's just something to think
He's
about.
cratering at the moment.
Well, That's not surprising.
Thanks very much. And thanks very much for everyone for calling in tonight. Always a great pleasure to chat with y'all. freedomainradio.com/donate to help out the show. Please, do whatever you can. If you've got money, great. We'd love it if you signed up for a subscription, $5, $10, $20, $50 a month or whatever you could afford. $20 a month, it's 75 cents, 80 cents a day. I'd like to think you could handle that if you can. And if you can't, if you've got no money at all, please don't send it in. We don't want to eat the food that you need to eat. But, you can always subscribe, share, get the videos out there, post them wherever you can. That would be helpful, very helpful, just to get the word out. So if you can't be a donator, at least you could help us find other donators because the way it works. To consume requires production, and we need the resources to be able to do what we do. So freedomainradio.com/donate. Please follow me on Twitter at Stefan Molyneux. And, of course, you can use our affiliate link at fdrurl.com/Amazon. And, of course, fdrpodcast.com to help share the shows. Thanks, everyone, so much. Always a great pleasure. Have a wonderful, wonderful week. We'll talk to you soon.